Greetings, everybody. So, full disclosure, I've actually made about 5 or 6 videos, and as I review them for content, one thing is universally true for anybody who knows me. Um, I have a tendency to trip and fall down rabbit holes. Sometimes I stumble down the hole, sometimes I just commit to free fall, and I just keep going. Um, and since I don't have a script and I'm not really big production, um, it's up to me to rewatch these videos and see if I'm not stammering or stuttering along. So with that being said, in these videos, I've addressed numerous topics. So here's the thing. I'm going to try to sum them up as quickly as possible, make my points consolidated, and then attempt to solicit feedback. If you already think similar to me, you're probably going to agree with me on most of these points, in which case it's not really supporting what I'm trying to do here. If you disagree, I ask that you make comments, get involved, provide me feedback that I can respond to. If you have a different point of view on something, and I don't care how you get a hold of me. It doesn't have to be. You don't have to put yourself out there. You can just get a hold of me privately if you're local and you know me. So with that being said, one of the first things I addressed was this whole thing with Nicki Minaj. Bottom line is this: Nicki Minaj is a performer. All right, she's a musician. She's a performer. They have always pushed the boundaries of what is considered socially acceptable. When I stop and think about it, going all the way back to my youth, when I was like, "Oh yeah, yeah," push the boundaries, push the boundaries. That's what artists do. They push boundaries. Well, she was often celebrated by the left, especially after her WAP, wet ass pussy. All right. Um, and then all of a sudden, either she posted it on social media, whether Twitter, Instagram, whatever the case may be. All right. She's asking questions about the vaccine, which, sidebar, this is an intentional rabbit hole. This is what I find funny. Trump is the one who basically cleared the red tape to get us vaccines at a much faster rate than the normal process that vaccines would have to go through, the trials, the studies, etc. And when he was still in office, everybody on the left, whether you call him a Democrat, liberal, whatever the case may be, elected, unelected, social media, you name it, F that, F the Trump vaccine, not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. Now all of a sudden, it's October of 2021. All right, Trump's been out of office for about 9 months, maybe more, maybe less, and we're dangerously close to vaccine mandates. All right, some companies, depending on what state they're in or whatever, like right to work states have way more flexibility. Some companies are firing people for not having a vaccine, which these are all Democratic leaders or left-leaning leaders, and what I find hilarious is this is basically Trump's vaccine. But I digress. So, back out of the hole. So, Nicki Minaj is being cannibalized for asking questions. Joy-Ann Reid, who made the news, who's been in the news, apparently she's a commentator, blasted her for using her platform incorrectly. And then, of course, Fauci, who, if you don't worship at the altar of Fauci, who, in my opinion, if you track his media appearances, he has backtracked, flip-flopped, you name it, on so many issues. I don't know how he's considered a credible source of anything. So Nicki Minaj gets blasted and cannibalized by the same people that were once loving her, which just demonstrates, in my personal opinion, what is so wrong with the left, whether that's Democrat, liberal, you name it. What is so wrong? The ability to cannibalize and eat their own. There's no forgiveness. They'll cancel themselves, whatever. So again, you got a difference of thought, difference of opinion. Bring it. Let's talk it out. Bill Maher was on Jimmy Kimmel not that long ago, and he was like, look, the liberal media's got to take responsibility for scaring the shit out of America. Not a false statement. And then I went on this diatribe, and I did pretty good at focusing, but the whole point was science, science, science. So you're either a science denier or you're not. Okay, you either worship at the altar of Fauci and you trust the science, or you're a science denier. Well, we have to keep in mind science is objective, it's empirical, it's emotionless. Science looks at everything. All we hear about is new cases, whether at the local level, the national level, you name it. All we hear about is brand new cases, clusters, more COVID outbreaks, a spike in COVID outbreaks. Fine. follow up with more facts. Science, right? Who's surviving? How many people are getting COVID and how many people are surviving? How many people are getting COVID and how many people are dying? Okay, and then inside of all that, you have other diversified information. People suffering side effects, people not suffering side effects, people who had underlying issues where if they would have caught any other strain of a corona-style virus, because keep in mind, COVID-19, 19th version, 19th strand, I may not be saying that 100% accurately, but my point being is give us real information, give us factual information, let us make an informed decision. Don't shape the information to fit a narrative, okay? So I expanded upon that. What else? I fell down a rabbit hole with Gavin Newsom, which was a mistake. What else did I talk about then? Oh yeah. So then I had also talked about this ordeal with Gabby Petito. Horrific circumstances, horrific situation. Talked to my therapist the other day, and she said during her undergraduate studies she worked, in forensics, and the unfortunate truth is, when it comes to media, narrative, etc., there's this thing about the idealized victim. So Joy-Ann Reid, who again is a commentator who, from what I understand, markets in black victimhood, people of color victimhood, women victimhood, white evil, white guilt, male white evil, male white guilt, heterosexual evil and guilt. She quoted somebody else when it came to this thing called missing white woman syndrome. And essentially, where I don't necessarily agree or disagree, but I will say this. According to my therapist, Gabby Petito must have fit some idealized victim narrative because she made the news. And we know for a fact hundreds of people probably suffer from similar situations as Gabby Petito. And I'm not making light of it. I'm not trying to take anything away from what Gabby Petito's family and friends are feeling right now. But if those people don't fit the ideal image of a victim, okay, pick your poison, then we probably don't hear about them. Joy-Ann Reid specifically mentioned, why don't we hear about it from people of color, in which case the Hodge twins responded, because if it's another person of color doing it to another person of color, it doesn't support the narrative, where the narrative has to be white evil, white male evil. And I'm summarizing and paraphrasing the hell out of that. Let's see, what else did I discuss? A buddy of mine posted something about school lunch programs, and I went on this long diatribe about that, when the short version is that money comes from the government. And you have two competing entities. So you have the first entity, which is it's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And then you have the other entity of use it or lose it. I went on this long tirade about how the government, does money, right? And the unfortunate truth is this, for those of you that are uninitiated. If a school receives $100 for breakfast and lunch for children who are have a food insecurity, they don't get to put that money in a bank. All right, so if they only have 5 kids and it requires $50, they don't get to put the other $50 in the bank. All right, it's basically like an allowance of some sort. If they don't use it, then it goes back to, say, the district, and then from the district to the county, county to the state, state to the federal government. So that's the unfortunate problem, is they're not just given money that they can put into a bank, it can earn interest, and then they can spend it as they need. All right, what ends up happening is if they're given 100 and they only spend 50, well, if they ever need 100 or more, then the amount of paperwork they have to do and the amount of justification they have to do to get that $100 back or more money, it's a pain. So it's one of those where use it or lose it, because it's better to have it than not need it. And I went on for like a half hour about that. And we can certainly talk about that, the food insecurities, as an individual topic, if anybody wants to provide feedback and get involved. If anybody wants to provide feedback on the whole Gabby Petito missing white woman syndrome, if you want, by all means get involved. What else was there? Um, I think the last thing I really hit on was something that was relatively close to home in my wheelhouse, which was the uh, the uh, Lieutenant Colonel. I can't remember his name. But he had posted this video. So he was the commanding officer of the Advanced Infantry Training Battalion. For the uninitiated who don't speak military, if learning how to do your military job is like going to undergrad, then once you have a job, any advanced training would be like postgraduate school. So he was the commanding officer of an infantry postgraduate school, if that makes it any simpler. He was in his office in his uniform and he made a video. The video has since then gone viral. He was challenging military leadership. Everything else I know is based on gossip and hearsay. All right, I don't know anything as fact. What I've heard via the rumor mill is that he was resigning his commission, in which case he was in the out processing process. It doesn't happen right away. It's not a one and done. It takes a while to eventually out process from the service. It was my understanding that he continued to make videos, at which case a superior commissioned officer basically told him to stop, to basically gave him a direct order to stop. In which case, apparently, all again according to rumor, he disobeyed the order, continued to make videos, and allegedly started dropping names of individuals as far as leadership goes, putting them on blast. And what I do know is he is currently in the brig in pretrial confinement. So I know a lot of talk show or commentary people that I listen to. I apologize, I should have come up with a better term for that. Have been making their feelings known on the subject, kind of like pro him. First and foremost, now that I'm retired, it's not whether I agree that our military leadership, owes an explanation. I can agree or disagree with that because I'm a civilian now. I don't wear the uniform anymore. The unfortunate truth is, when you're in the service and you're in the uniform, it's your job to drink the Kool-Aid. In a leadership position, one of the hardest things to do is not only drink the Kool-Aid, but also it's your job to put frosting on dog turds and sell them as cupcakes. Okay? So he, as a leader, as somebody who was also authorized to punish others, he basically violated an unwritten code of conduct, if you will. And then furthermore, if he continued to make videos after being told not to, you have to understand the military is a fascist dictatorship that supports and defends democracy. It's not a democracy in and of itself. All right, you don't get to pick and choose which rules you want to follow. If a superior authority, all right, told him to cease and assist, and he failed to cease and assist, and he was potentially dropping names and or information that could be considered vital to security or whatever the case may be, the fact that he's in pretrial confinement may be simply because of them being concerned over what he may say. I've also heard through the rumor mill that he has been locked up without charges. Well, here's what I will say. He was a lieutenant colonel. That's 5 out of 10 officer ranks, which means he was probably ordered by a full bird colonel or even a general officer, all right, which is either a 6, 7, or 8 out of 10 ranks. You don't get to those positions by being an idiot. All right? Is it true that I've met some guys that come across as idiots? Sure. But typically speaking, you don't get to those positions because you're a full-on retard. All right? These are some pretty smart individuals entrusted with some significant authority. All right? If they locked him up without charges, I'd like to believe that they did so appropriately, that they followed the appropriate legal channels to lock him up without an Article 32 hearing due to the potential perceived risk of what he might say. You have to understand, after 17 years of being a military officer, he may have been exposed to information that could be vital to, let's just say, security or individual security, where basically the only way to gag him for certain is to put him in the brig. All right? But again, we don't have to agree on that. If you'd like to discuss it more, by all means get involved. If for some ungodly reason one of these internet-based celebrities, like say Steven Crowder, the Hodge twins, Ben Shapiro, if any of them get a hold of this and they want to discuss it further, I would gladly do so. And it doesn't have to be like this for popularity's sake. I could do so in writing, over the phone, because I know, like when it came to Steven Crowder, who I enjoy watching thoroughly, he, in my personal opinion, as somebody who wasn't in the military, he was advocating for a guy on certain principles without maybe understanding the military, in which case maybe he should reach out to the Hodge twins and kind of get a lesson on the military, in which case it may change his opinion. And I'm trying to think if there was anything else, because I'm at 15 minutes. I'm trying to keep this short. I think that pretty much does it. So that's basically what I attempted to talk about over the last several weeks. Just for whatever reason, on a couple of those topics, I just went down some rabbit holes and just kept stammering on about God knows what. Which, if you know me, it's not that far of a stretch. So with that being said, hopefully I'll get this published and posted, and I look forward to your feedback. When it comes to YouTube, you guys know the deal. Like, dislike, hit the bell, subscribe. But more importantly, leave comments. Okay, not because of the algorithms and whatnot, but the whole idea is to get us talking. The whole idea is to try and bridge gaps. Because, like Joe Rogan said, if we continue to allow the government to create power or take power, they're never going to give it back. All right, and all I can tell so far is that there seems to be this push to divide us. Okay, and I think you either A, you're ignorantly allowing yourself to be divided, or B, maybe you're very hardcore in some of your beliefs. I actually believe the majority of us are somewhere in the middle. We're more purple than we are blue or red. We can be red on some topics, blue on some topics, or maybe, we're single issue voters. We could care less about everything else, but there's one issue near and dear to our heart, and we have to go with that. But with that being said, I'm trying to solicit comments, all right, so we can start to bridge the gap and communicate with one another. So I'm going to close with that. It's been over 17 minutes. Hopefully this isn't too long that some of you won't watch it. So I hope to hear from you.